Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. My name is Latrina Foster, Director of the Fulton County Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities. It is my honor to be the moderator today as we talk about protecting the mental health of our future leaders. And how can we protect the mental health of our future leaders? By providing them an opportunity to speak up. And that is what today is about, providing our teens with an opportunity to speak up and share with us where they are in life in response to COVID-19, national protests, Black Lives Matter, no peace, no justice. There are so many things that are going on in our world today. Our world has been paralyzed by COVID-19. It has impacted our youth in many ways that we may not even be familiar with. So therefore, today is a day that we're going to listen to our youth. As we engage in this event today, which is a community conversation, which means that I need my viewers to tune in and to submit questions because we want to hear your voice as well. We have two great panelists that are speaking from a teen's perspective today, and I want to allow them an opportunity to introduce themselves to us. We'll first start with Mr. Vadu.
Hi, I'm Vadu. I'm 17 years old. I'm a senior at Northview High School, and I'm the chairman to the Youth Commission.
Thank you so much, and we look forward to hearing from you today. And Ms. Harshita.
Hi, my name is Harshita. I'm 16 years old, and I'm a rising junior in Milton, and I serve as the health lead on the Fulton County Youth Commission.
Thank you so much. And then in addition, we have some professionals that have dedicated their lives to cultivate a safe environment for our youth, to create productive communities and strong families. I'm going to start with Dr. Salton Sims.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Dr. Sims. I'm a psychiatrist, and I'm the immediate past president of the Georgia Psychiatric Physician Association. That's the Georgia chapter of the American Psychiatric Association. I'm also a medical director with WellCare Health Plans, which is a Centene company. Have a history with Fulton County as a staff psychiatrist and medical director as well.
Thank you so much. We look forward to hearing from you today, Dr. Sims. And then I have Olatunji.
Greetings, everyone. I'm Minister Olatunji Lumumba with the Pan-African Orthodox Christian Church. I'm a trainer with the Male Action Coalition, which is a youth development program that grew out of our community.
You also work with the Concerned Black Clergy, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. We look forward to hearing from you as well. And then we have Dustin.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dustin Poole. I am a advocate for the Black Mental Health Matter group, and I'm also a current employee of Fulton County Department of Behavioral Health as the executive assistant. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you. Hearing from you and your efforts towards Black mental health matters as you all attempt to increase awareness and drop the stigma on mental health within our communities. So let's get started, everyone. Once again, we ask that you please submit questions to social@Fulton so that we ensure that your voices are heard as well as we shift through today's community discussion and allow our teens an opportunity to speak up. Ms. Harshita, let me start with you. So in March, COVID-19 paralyzed our nation. Your school closed. How did that impact you?
So we came to school in March, and then the very next day we were told by email that our schools have closed indefinitely. So the turnaround was really quick, and it was almost, our lives were uprooted. Everything that we knew was not there anymore. And this was in March, and for high schoolers, AP exams are in May. So it was almost trying to get used to a transition into online schools, getting used to the platforms being changed, getting used to teachers having to make that transition, having students have to make that transition, and then also knowing that within a month's time, we're sitting for big exams that might determine our futures. So it was scary. immediately due to education, it was terrifying. Not only that, it was just the lack of structure. That was something that I faced every day, waking up and then having to actively like force myself to sit down and learn, knowing that my education was still at stake. But then still finding that drive to work, especially when you're sitting at home, when your classroom is now your bedroom, when it's the same place where you sit and watch TV is now the place that you have to sit and force yourself to learn. That's a hard transition to make, and it's not as easily put into words as it is when you're actually actively facing it. So that was one thing that was definitely hard. It was also the lack of social structures. It was going one day, seeing all your friends, and then having to know that the next 4 months, currently right now too, not seeing anyone other than my immediate family. That brings a person down, especially youth, where mental health has always been a problem, and now it's heightened just because of the fact that we can't see people. Our peers are the ones that we empathize with the most at this age, and now having that communication not be there anymore, it hurts, and it takes a toll on you.
Thank you so much. Badu, so announcements have been made pretty much in majority of the counties throughout the state of Georgia that schools will not reopen for in-person classroom setting. How has that impacted you, or how do you feel about the fact that you will continue with the virtual learning for the first 6 to 9 weeks of school?
I was really relieved that they made this decision, because I think that it's one thing to think about us and one thing to think about our parents and our grandparents and our immediate family who might be more at risk because we have stronger immune systems, generally speaking. So I think that the decision that was made by Fulton County is a smart one, and that it's going to keep a lot of us safe.
Thank you. So with that said, what do you have to do to prepare yourself for the ongoing virtual learning?
I'm not too sure about the plan that they, like the specifics of the plan that they pushed out, but we're going to be using a platform called Google Classroom, and teachers are going to be posting possibly lectures, some classwork, tests, and other projects.
So Dr. Sims, as a psychiatrist, and I'm sure you have a lot of interaction with parents, have you heard anything from parents in reference to the virtual learning decision?
I think a lot of what we're hearing in the community is concern. Parents are not teachers. I think not all parents are teachers. I think a lot of parents have developed a greater appreciation for what our teachers do and how they take care of our children. It's been very challenging for a lot of people. Parents continue to have to work. Those who are fortunate enough to maintain employment are having to figure out how to manage their responsibilities at work while seeing about their children and making sure everyone's fed and making sure homework is getting done. And especially for younger children, 5, 6, 7 years old, making sure they have the proper academic support. It's really difficult for a lot of parents. And I think the ability to manage this change, it varies. There are those who have more support, who have more resources, who have more help from their community and kind of their village. And there are those who have very limited resources and very limited supports, parents who have essential jobs that they're not able to maybe take time off of or miss a day or two. Those folks are really struggling right now. So as a community, we really have to really work and figure out ways that we can provide support, the supports that people need.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Olatunji, any advice for parents that are stuck in this situation where they have to work? Any strategies that you can give them to implement a environment for their youth while they are at home doing virtual learning?
You're missing out. You're muted.
Your phone is muted.
There you go.
Okay, there we go.
One of the key factors, yes, one of the key factors that have allowed our community to survive many various social ills has been developing a support system. When parents are isolated, trying to take care of their children and job situation, of course, it can be very difficult when we have those extensions in terms of community support with schools, with churches. It helps to, as we say, it takes a village to raise a child. These are very difficult times, and we have to work more collectively together to address these very many issues. Social conditions can always affect mental health. So we're kind of always moving from a position of not feeling like we're fully recognized as full citizens. Then this issue of dealing with health in our communities, oftentimes the conditions for health is in a unbalanced situation. We don't have proper health care. And then we got COVID-19. All these many issues clearly have to be addressed through some type of support system.
Thank you very much. Harashita, let me ask you, so as we went through COVID-19, and we're still going through COVID-19, because as you can see, the infection rates continue to climb back up. So it kind of puts us back where we were, perhaps in March and April, when it comes to our level of fear or anxiety. How have you been able to cope with the, as we tag it, the social distancing, but I like to call it physical distancing, because we can still have social interactions via Zoom, as we are today, or your other social media platforms. So how have you been able to cope with the social/physical distancing from your friends and perhaps family?
Yeah, that's a big part of that, again, is with virtual communications, talking to my friends. Just because we're not physically at school together, or just because we can't meet up after school, doesn't mean that they don't exist anymore. So I think that's a huge part that within the first few months was a little bit lower, just as we were trying to adjust ourselves. But now just actively making time to talk to people, it's a great reconnecting thing. So a lot of my friends that I've lost touch with over the years, just because of schools and just transfers and things like that, distance, I've sat and had huge conversations with them. It just is a matter of picking up the phone, and those 5-minute conversations that you expect it to be can go on for hours. And so that's really great. Also, communication within my own family has, not that we don't talk to each other before COVID, but it's definitely now forced us to spend every waking moment with each other, which for me as a sister was really tough at first. And it's pretty torturous pretty soon right now too, but it's forced us to connect with each other. And it's given us a chance to talk to each other just with stories I've heard. I'm a daughter of 2 immigrants, so it's stories of their life, how different it was from my life, things that, you know, when we had a life outside of our house, those things weren't things that we could actively talk about just because of the rushed sense that our lives were at that point. And now that we were forced to take a step back, and I think there's no silver lining to COVID. There never will be. People are dying. But if there was one, it's just the sense of connecting that COVID has forced us to do.
Absolutely, thank you. Badu, how has the social/physical distancing impacted you?
Well, most of the time I'm working, honestly, but now, because I can't go out and hang out with my friends, I just regularly FaceTime them or just text them. I do talk to my family like the regular amount, the same amount I would have talked to them before, I guess.
So with COVID-19, did it cultivate any new relationships or any new communication styles within your families? Harshita or Badu, you can take that question.
I think the biggest thing has just been reconnecting, like I said. So talking to people that I haven't talked to in a very, very long time. As for new communications within my family, I think we found new interests. So my family is big into actively going out, which is something we can't do right now. So we've sat down, talked, have conversations, we've laughed a lot. We're also now getting into board games, which is something that wasn't really a thing in my house. So right now we're majorly into Clue. There's something about a murder mystery that gets us really excited. And then we're also now into Monopoly, because that game pretty much never ends. So it's like, as long as we play it, we will never get bored.
Absolutely, thank you. And so for you, Vadu, tell me about any fears or anxieties you may have had in relation to COVID-19 hitting home. The fear around your friends or your parents being impacted by COVID-19?
Well, one of my aunts just got COVID-19, but she recovered, thankfully. And that was really scary for all of us. Even though I'm not super close with my aunt, she lives in India, and we were on the phone for a while. And yeah, it was really impactful. I'm really scared about my dad or my mom getting COVID, because that would mean that they probably got it through me, because they don't go out at all, and I do sometimes, like rarely. So that would be really scary.
So Vadu, what are some safety measures? With that said, what are some safety measures that you have to take to ensure the safety of your mom and your dad?
Whenever I do go out, I don't go out that much, but I do wear gloves, I wear a mask, and I make sure not to touch my face. I make sure to keep at least 6 feet distance. All of the guidelines that the CDC published, really.
I was getting ready to say you've been reading the CDC guidelines. Thank you. And so in addition to that, I'm curious. So we have COVID-19, paralyzed the nation. Everyone's in quarantine. Everyone's practicing physical distancing. You're spending more time in your home. You're spending more time with your family. Everyone's trying to get creative and come up with innovative things to do to keep your mind going. What are some innovative things that you were able to implement, but do as you were exercising the social distancing?
I've been trying to pass the time, honestly, because I get bored quite often at home when I'm not working. I recently got into cooking. I'm not good, but that's just something to pass the time, you know?
Absolutely. Harshita, any new hobbies for you?
I've been journaling, which is something that it's proven as a coping mechanism. I started it just as a fun thing because I saw a bunch of other people doing it. And right now it's been a lifeline almost. I started it when schools closed back in March. So my 4th month now journaling, give or take, 5 months actually. And so I sit down and I write pretty much every day. I force myself to write in it for about 20 minutes. And it's really made me think about exactly what's happened that day, how it's made me feel. And it's been a huge coping mechanism for me.
Thank you. Dr. Sims, so as you hear, the teens have come up with some interventions and some strategies to assist them with coping through COVID-19. Any other suggestions for teens to implement as far as interventions or effective coping skills?
Yeah, absolutely. As Vadu and Harshita was speaking, I was hearing a lot about kind of staying home and figuring out how to kind of entertain yourselves at home. You know, remember, prior to COVID-19, you heard a lot about our obesity epidemic in the United States and really in a lot of places in the world. And I imagine you heard a lot of encouragement or a lot about getting out and being physically active. And I really want all people, young people, older people, to take away from this conversation that hasn't gone away. And we can still be physically active while practicing physical distancing. We can get out and we might need to be creative. We can go out and take a walk on the many trails, and there are many state parks throughout the state of Georgia. I've been to Sweetwater Creek Park and Stone Mountain Park. and picked up hiking. We can walk our pets. Maybe if you have a dog and you weren't walking the dog, I have a couple of teenagers who don't walk my dog without a lot of pressure from me. You might start walking the dog, or maybe walking the dog an extra time or two. You know, I know our gyms are reopening, but when you listen to the CDC guidance, the real risk is kind of prolonged exposure with larger groups, and especially in indoor spaces where the air is not really circulating well. So I'm not a big fan of indoor spaces right now, but get out, be active. And that plays a role in our mental health. Physical fitness, physical activity, healthy eating, those have always been an important part of having a healthy, balanced life, and helping to maintain your emotional health. The last thing, I can ramble on, but the last thing I'll say is when I'm talking to young people, I'm particularly concerned about social media and the need to set limits when it comes to the images that we consume. As the social unrest was happening, as we were hearing about people dying from COVID-19, our 24-hour news cycle was inundating us with images of people being killed, of hospitals being overrun, of healthcare professionals being emotionally taxed. And you don't have to watch that 24 hours a day. It brings up feelings for a lot of people of anger, helplessness, fear, anxiety. When you start to experience those emotions, plug out, step back, turn the TV off, get off of Instagram or whatever I don't want to make myself sound old. I won't say Facebook, but that's for old folks. But whatever the social media is, I want young people to stay connected, but you got to plug out because there's a lot of negativity out there. And when you feel, you'll know, your body will tell you when you're starting to feel just bad. And I've spoken to a lot of people who they didn't think about it until they heard someone tell them, maybe turn the news off or don't watch it so much. And they started to do that. They started to unplug and notice that they were feeling better than when they were just constantly consuming these negative images. So I want everyone to hear that and hopefully work on developing ways of protecting yourself and really setting those limits.
Thank you. So Mr. Poole, what that said about social media, because I know that a lot of your work is through social media campaigns. And so how do you ensure that you filter a message that's positive around mental health, but doesn't overwhelm individuals as they surf through your information?
One thing that we focus on is simplifying the tactics that we utilize in order for people to overcome their problems with mental health. So we want to convey to them things that are going on in society, such as marginalization and debunking the negative myths around stigmas, around trying to seek information just because you feel ashamed. So what we put out there is information on a simplistic scale, and we put it in hashtags on Twitter and Instagram and anything else that a user can go out and utilize on their social media. And what it is just hashtag Black Mental Health Matter. And once you type in this hashtag, there will be an array of information for you within your proper jurisdiction. So, Black Mental Health Matter is a grassroots advocacy program that has gained recognition throughout the nation. So if you find information on one of these platforms that I just mentioned, it will be applicable to you in whatever area that you're in. So you can click on that link. You can literally Google right now, Black Mental Health Matter, and you will find information in whatever city, whatever state that you are in. And that's how we have consolidated it. So everybody can come, they can find efficient and effective information that will help them in the situation that they're in at that moment. So it's not about being on social media for too long. We try to make it more efficient that way so a person can get exactly what they need in a matter of minutes.
Thank you. So Vadu, what are some advice that you could give to other teens about unplugging, as I like to call it, just kind of stepping away from social media or television?
Honestly, I'd just say to explore something that might interest you, like reading a book or cooking, like I've been doing. Uh, Anything that's not involving screen for a little bit might be good.
Harshita, any tips from you for teens as it relates to social media?
For me, the biggest thing I've done right now is actively just put my phone away, which is kind of daunting. It was for me. I have this horrible habit of just reaching out for my phone whenever I get bored. That's something that I have actively fought during these 4 months. Putting my phone away, letting it die, which is like unbelievable for me.
And you survived.
I know. I went a day without my phone.
Right.
Who would have thought? Yeah, those are huge things, and they really make you focus on what's happening in front of you right now. Ultimately, what's on your phone, didn't use the information, that's important, but when you let that get the best of you and when you let that take over your life, because there isn't any other avenue, or it feels as though there isn't any other avenue, that's when your mental health starts taking a toll. I've been there. So I think the best thing really is to just step away from your phone, put it away, put everything away, talk to your family, talk to people, do cooking, stuff like that. Just find a different interest.
Awesome. Thank you. Dr. Sims, I was reading an article in the Wall Street Journal, and it was tagged stress and trauma as it relates to racism, and how there's a new wave of psychologists and psychiatrists looking at the impact of racism on individuals as it correlates to stress and trauma. And they're saying that individuals are misdiagnosed or they're not diagnosed. What are your thoughts around that? And they're trying to develop new interventions to work with people around their experiences with racism because it does cause stress and trauma in their lives.
So my thoughts are, I think the core issue is trauma. And so whether it's trauma from racism or general stress or medical issues or combat, it all comes back to trauma. And I think it's helpful. I think it's informative to do that go through the academic exercise of giving something a name and really doing proper research around it, helping to inform the public and individuals who are suffering. And because there's a lot of power in kind of understanding what's going on with you. And so I think that's a good thing. Ultimately, though, it comes back to recognizing that a person is experiencing trauma in a group in a wider society, folks who are experiencing trauma. And then the key is to come up with interventions. To me, the most gratifying part of this social movement that's going on is that there have been things that have been going on in this country my entire life. But for some reason, now is the time that everyone has decided to acknowledge those things that are happening and to acknowledge the impact that it's having on our fellow Americans, particularly Black Americans, when you talk about the Black Lives Matter movement. But that's been gratifying to me that those outside of the Black community have decided to step up and be a part of the solution and to be allies and to help when it comes to support. So again, to try to stay on track with your question, to me, it's about understanding that trauma and coming up with solutions. I don't get excited when people give something a name. Sure, it's part of the process, but to me, that's not the whole process. What are we going to do about it? I'm a results-oriented person. And I think more and more researchers and folks who are focused on this issue have come up with tangible things that can be done to help support people who have been struggling with trauma. And in this case, you're talking specifically about racial trauma. It affects our health. It affects our employment opportunities. And it affects our families. It affects our hope for the future. There's so much that goes into that. And there are a lot of things that we can do to help people. And really, it's an American problem. And we need all of our fellow Americans to help and become a part of the solution.
Thank you. Harishita, just speaking with some of your peers, what would you say has been the impact on our teens as it relates to the national protest?
I think it's a sense of unity that we have not had in a very long time. And especially now that we are home and we're desperate, I think it's been a great way for us to channel our isolation and our angst into something that has a hugely beneficial result and a much needed result. We're going through a revolution right now. And I think the biggest part of this revolution that's so different than others is the active role that youth have in it and the voice that we're showing in our communities. With the commission, with everything, I think the biggest thing that we push out there is that we have a voice and we want to be heard. And right now, that has been something that I've been so proud of, my friends, of myself. We're taking all that built up emotions that have been there for months, and we don't know where to put that into. And now we've been given a place to channel all that into, and that place is coming in, has a productive result to it. I think it's a great thing that's happening right now.
Thanks. Badu, she says something interesting. We have a voice. And so with that said, how do you demonstrate your voice?
I think that using social media would be a good way to demonstrate your voice. I feel like a lot of us take it for granted, but just to post like beach pictures and stuff like that isn't really using it to its full extent. You can really spread messages through social media.
Thank you. Olatunji, we have parents watching whose children are saying, Mom, Dad, I have a voice as well. And they want to be actively involved. And we have parents that are very nervous about their children going out and protesting. Any advice on how a parent can sit down with their child to help them exercise their voice in a safe and productive way?
Well, I like to say that, of course, social media is an outlet. We still have a digital divide within the African American community. We advise parents to get connected as soon as possible. We don't know what the future will look like in terms of school, but we know we must continue to educate our children. And in our organization, shrineoftheblackmadonna.org, you can see a number of ways that we have been using social media to keep our youth connected, to keep parents connected to resources. Whenever a question is asked, what can we do to help? We want to make sure that we close the digital divide. We provide resources. We seek resources that will allow us to have access to internet in our homes for information, for education. When you add racial violence to COVID-19, it can have increased impact on the mental health of our youth. My youngest child is 16, and just keeping him in the house for 3 months, it's just been a major issue. It's hard to keep young people isolated, but today is very dangerous when they do get together in crowds, as we spoke about earlier. So social media can provide another outlet for information and for communication. We're still learning the truth about who we are as a people. I encourage parents to use social media to gain more information about Black history and culture. It helps to provide value clarification for our parents and for our children. I've noticed as a historian that there's a great deal of information now available online as to the truth about our history and our culture, that culturally relevant education helps to fortify positive self-esteem, that helps with mental health issues as well. Our righteous, something that is necessary.
I think we're losing connection with.
We don't want it to evolve into blind rage. We want to use.
I think had a bad connection with Olatunji.
I think I lost you for a minute there. Am I back?
We did.
Okay, let me conclude with just saying that we have used in our training program at the Male Action Coalition life skills training. Of course, entrepreneurship. Many of our communities are losing jobs. We don't know if those parents will get those jobs back. We find oftentimes our children are competing for jobs that are obsolete. So we need to stop saying, go to school, get a good education so you can get a good job, and start saying, get a good education so you can go into business for ourselves as a community. That helps the Black community and helps the American community as well. We have to put more resources into entrepreneurship in the African American community for our youth. And of course, leadership training is a part of our overall Male Action Coalition program. So we need to do more of those kinds of things toward solutions rather than just blind rage, and that kind of wanes away after a while, and then we find ourselves back in the same condition.
Thank you very much. Mr. Poole, any advice for our teens as it relates to ensuring that they recognize the importance of mental health?
Well, the best advice I could give is focusing on strategies such as social intelligence, emotional intelligence. If you research these things, it'll allow you to understand how to interact with other people who are going through similar stresses, and then you can learn other things for yourself. As a public administrator within government, we want to go out into communities and research exactly what is the problem within the community. So we utilize baseline data points to collect data about what is going on in the lives of minorities and whoever needs help within the communities. So the best thing I could tell you to do is to reach out to your specialists, reach out to your providers by researching the information that is online. Remember, always hashtag Black Lives Matters, or if you just want information on basic mental health, you can contact the providers that support Black Lives Matters and Black Mental Lives Matters by researching that information online as well. We just want to stick to the strategies that are best used for coping, and just being honest with yourself, utilizing gratitude toward others, and figuring out mechanisms and strategies that help individuals how to control anger management. So if you can hone in on these things within your life, then we believe that you will be able to cope with the stresses that are apparent in today's society.
Thank you. So once again, I just want to remind everyone, please submit your questions to social@fultoncountyga.gov. social@fultoncountyga.gov. We look forward to hearing from you as we continue this community conversation on Teens Speak Up, protecting the mental health of our future leaders. Badu, what advice would you give to other teens as it relates to them protecting their mental health?
I would say that they need to limit going outside as much as possible, but still, like Dr. Sim said, exercise and get that sunlight, I guess. Preoccupy yourself with some sort of hobby or interest that you might have, and don't sit on your computer for like 15 hours a day. That's not healthy.
Thank you. Harshita, any advice to parents how they could help cultivate the mental health within their children?
Talk. Something that we've done as a family, especially now, is just the simple "how was your day" question, and not take "okay, good" as an answer. Those are answers that I am infamous to give. Those answers aren't enough. And I think those have forced us as a family to come together, actually talk about our feelings, which is something that's really hard to do as a team, just because we're battling with so much and we don't know the proper words to go about it. At least for me personally, that's a problem that I've always had. So I think definitely if people can just actively force us to sit down and say, okay isn't enough, what happened in your day, what made it okay, what made it good. Having those discussions has really helped us.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask Marcel, who's behind the scenes, if we have received questions, and perhaps we can go ahead and hear a few questions right now for our panelists to address.
Sure. Good afternoon. The first question is, I am a high school student going into my senior year. This is supposed to be a time that is exciting about things that are going on. Should I block out everything else and just worry about what's happening with me? And if so, how do I do that? There's so much happening in the world right now. What am I supposed to focus on?
So, Badu, can we do a team-to-team response, and then I can come back and ask Dr. Sims to chime in if necessary?
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. I'm a senior too, and I know that we were sort of promised since we were kids that senior year was going to be the first like cool year, right before college. But if you look at the harsh reality of things, because it's all shifted so much, we're just gonna need to like stay at home and be safe, and don't like Dr. Sim said, don't constantly watch the news and be super paranoid about it, but still be aware about what's going on in terms of COVID, and just try to preoccupy yourself, because eventually things are gonna get better.
Thank you, Badu. So that's team-to-team speaking. Dr. Sims, is there anything that you would like to add to that?
I guess I'd want to express my empathy for rising seniors. I actually have one of my sons is a rising senior. It's unfortunately it's a life lesson. It's a tough life lesson that sometimes these things just happen in life, and we have to learn how to be resilient. We have to learn how to cope and to move on and to make the best of things. In terms of the person asking that question, don't lose sight of yourself and of your future. I think you should stay focused on what can I do under the current circumstances to still set myself up to have the future that I want. What steps can I take? What supports can I reach out to? Who can I ask questions? What's the college application process going to be like, or post high school, if I don't go to college and I go into a particular vocation, what steps can I take now? Those things don't just happen. You have to be proactive and seek out the steps you need to take to set up the future that you want. So for me, that would be my focus, while staying engaged, staying aware. And I do think it's a great opportunity for the youth to show their strength. Harshita spoke about the voice that young people have and how they're really kind of coming into their own. I really have been proud of how our youth has stepped up. And I think for some of the adults, it's been an opportunity to maybe step back a little bit and have some fresh voices really speak up and get involved. So that would be my response to that. It's a tough pill to swallow. But it will be something you'll look back on, and hopefully you'll be able to say I was resilient during that time. I knew that life goes on, and I have to figure out what I need to do to set myself up for the future that I want.
Thank you. Marcel, next question.
Sure. The next one comes from a grandfather. It says, I have a granddaughter who is very talented, 18 years old, having just graduated from high school in Atlanta. How do I navigate the conversation to discuss the possible postponement or the delay of her chosen college, Albany State University, opening? They have the students scheduled to arrive on August 4th through the 6th to begin live classes 2 weeks later. As a concerned grandparent, what language should I use to discuss this? Since I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but I want her to be prepared mentally for the possible postponement.
Harshita, how would you, what advice would you give this grandfather to speak to someone where they will be receptive?
I think that's something that we're all facing right now. And I know that sounds a little overbearing to a lesser extent, but I think it's just to have that conversation, be open about it. We know what's happening in the world, everyone does, but to sit and say it's okay. I've faced that with now schools not reopening in the fall. That was something that I was looking forward to, is okay, like after 5 months of this, I'm going to go back to school. My life is going back to normal. I think it's something that it hurts. And of course it hurts. I think it's also something that can't be helped right now. And it's about realizing that we are responsible for each other now more than ever, and our people's lives are at stake. And so it's just coming to terms with that.
Thank you. Marcel, do we have time for one more question?
Yeah, I have one more. The last one is, these days, Black Lives Matter is something that young people are gravitating towards. How do I know the difference between the various groups? I want to get involved, but just don't know how.
So I think, Olatunji, you spoke on this subject. And so I think I'm going to go ahead and direct this question to you, please.
Well, I want to agree with the panelists on encouraging our youth to stay committed and focused toward their educational goals. Homeschool is becoming a growing industry. Many of the colleges, universities, public schools, all having to retool to deal with the reality that more educational content is now available online than ever before. So I want to just say to the earlier questions, continue to pursue your educational goals online until things clear up in the other educational institutions. You can learn everything online these days. So, but you have to be disciplined and organized in order to go to school online at home. Black Lives Matter is a righteous protest against police violence, against racial violence. The main idea is to be organized beyond the protests to effect change in the communities that we live in, so that it's not just a spur of the moment kind of thing. We have to move beyond the righteous indignation to organizational solutions, which means that we have to be committed to an organizational process.
Thank you. And so as we begin to close our community discussion, please remember that you can continue to send your questions, and we will always respond to your questions, whether we're live or not. Never hesitate to send questions to us. We are the Fulton County Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities. You can always send questions to social@fultoncountyga.gov, and we will ensure that we respond to your question or your concern. Before we leave today, because this conversation was about teens speaking up, an opportunity for them to bridge the gap, to bridge the gap, so that we can begin communicating between teens and professionals, teens and parents. So all together, we recognize where our teens are as they struggle through COVID-19, as they navigate through the process of school as they knew it changing, as whatever was normal before, there is no normal before. Now we'll transition to a new normal, which may be a great thing, but we have to get there. And so we have to work together to ensure that our teens, our future leaders, remain safe and steadfast, and that we protect their mental health. And so before we close, I want to see if my panelists have any closing remarks. We have about 2 minutes. And first I want to start with Badu. If you could please just give any advice that you may have to our teens that are listening, or even our parents that are listening. How do they more effectively communicate with their teens?
I just think that they need to cite like where they're getting this information, because for me, whenever I'm talking to my mom, I know it's not good, but I'm always like, where are you getting this from? So if you look at the CDC guidelines that are really clear about what you need to do, just 6 feet apart, masks, and just tell them to follow those rules, I think you should be good.
Thank you.
And then actually, I do have one more thing to say.
Yes.
A lot of my friends and classmates have been going to like the beach where it's super crowded. They've been going to parties. In fact, someone I know got coronavirus as well as 10 other people at the same party they went to. So I think that people need to calm it down a little bit.
Thank you. Harshita.
Yeah, like Badu said, I think it's peer-to-peer. And I know that sounds a little cliche, but just telling, having that peer-to-peer role model influence type thing, where if you have friends that are going out who aren't practicing the safety guidelines by CDC, who aren't being safe about it, you can't live your life in fear. I know that's something that I've done for the first few months of this, and now as we're going back out into the world, be proactive. Definitely be proactive. People's lives are at stakes. I've said that a couple of times today. So yeah, just that peer-to-peer influence, and just be a healthy influence on people and not a negative one.
Thank you. Olatunji, Dr. Sims, Dustin, I want to thank you all so much for participating in our conversation today as we continue to work together to protect the mental health of our future leaders. Thank you all for tuning in, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. Don't hesitate to send questions, social@fultoncountyga.gov. Thank you all so much, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fulton County.
Thank you.